I'm really not a printmaker, so I enjoy all the adjusting and changing them after they've been printed. This right here is the effect that the printing press gives that the pencil does not do. So by the time I'm finished, I can no longer call it a monoprint because I worked over it so much with all these hand additions. I know it looks like a painstaking job, but I don't mind doing it.
This is a real kind of typical John Wissman scene here with so much detail, and you know, the sheds, the docks, the pilings, a lot of linear stuff, a lot of perspective.
Silhouettes.
A lot of silhouettes, yeah. And it's just about ideal for what John's doing right now because it's a real mixture of abstraction and representation.
All the shapes and colors I want to use are right here. Whether I use them sort of realistically or abstractly, they're just all here and they're constantly changing. They keep fascinating me. I like the stencils because they're so mobile. You can use them backwards and forwards, even upside down, and move them from one composition to the next. I often start with small pencil sketches of the actual buildings on site. And then if I want them bigger, I take them to a printer and have them enlarge. This is the part where one can be very creative with the stencils once one creates. In fact, several people say they're really more interested in my stencils than in what I use them for. It's almost a form of meditation, sitting here and just cutting.
How long have I known your work? For about 20 years, I think?
I think about 20 years. Yeah, I don't keep track of things like that.
Know that I've been enjoying it for a really long time. You were working in watercolor. Then you worked into the watercolor with colored pencil, and then you started to use the colored pencil exclusively. What made you make that move?
I think one year we were traveling, going away the winter for a couple of months, and it was so much easier to take just a set of colored pencils and a nice pad of paper. And I found I liked the colored pencils. And for some reason, when I worked with colored pencils, the whole composition was more colorful than when I was doing the watercolor. I don't know why that happened, but it just did. And I've stuck to them ever since. As the compositions got more and more complicated, it was easier with the colored pencil to keep things under control.
Since I've had the privilege of showing your work for a long time, the earliest ones done in all colored pencil, I think when you looked at them carefully, you could see that's how they're done. Although people would say, isn't it amazing anyone can do that with colored pencil? And you seem to have, at one point, I don't know, maybe about 8 years ago, moved to a different level. And people look at them now and say, colored pencil, you've got to be kidding.
Well, that's just because I use a lot of pressure. Colored pencils now are made better. They're better quality than they used to be 20 or 30 years ago. But if you press pretty hard, you get good, rich color. And I also put one color right on top of another color. And it does take a long time, but I don't mind that. But I'm thinking back now, one reason I switched to pencil, if I did watercolor and had a paper stencil, it would often ruin the stencil.
Oh, I see.
If I keep them dry with a pencil, they would last longer. And now, I'm largely using lithograph ink on my stencils, and those stencils will last forever. When that ink dries, they become pretty permanent.
But almost turning them into a plastic almost.
Yeah, that's what it's like.
I've always been really intrigued by your color sense, John. What relation do the colors have to the shapes that you're using in the stencils? Is it intuitive?
At first, they don't have much of a relationship. But if I start out inking with a color and add a second color and print it, then a lot of possibilities arise where one color maybe goes on top of another color, and I see the possibilities of a third color and other combinations. Then I really get to working on it.
Color itself is just very instinctual. Even using the same design, if you change the color scheme, people frequently won't recognize that it's the same design at all.
Oh, that's correct, because I use the same stencils over and over with a different color feeling. You've said it just right. I'm constantly changing my mind when I'm working. You know, things happen and you get other ideas about it, and so you go with it and see what happens.
Well, one of the things I've enjoyed about your work is that I've always admired, particularly you manage that combination of technical precision and a kind of spiritual openness and wit. You keep that feeling of improvisation in it.
Yeah, I do want to keep that. Yeah. It's strange because I really love big sort of abstract expressionist kind of painting, which is nothing like what I do, but I like to see that in other people's work.
The last few years you've been using a printing press as one of your tools. You want to tell me a little about that?
Well, that happened 5 or 6 years ago. Francis Hudson, who runs the Round Top Print Center, invited some artists to come down there and work, just to see if we liked it or not. And the only deal was we had to leave one print with them for some benefit auction. And I got to like it. I liked putting things through that press and then being surprised when you lifted the paper and see what you had. And then I don't leave them as prints. I work on them after they dry with colored pencils.
Yeah, well, I think they're formally called monoprints with hand additions. Although you said to me once that it's really a way of painting and drawing, but using a printing press is one of the tools.
Yeah, I don't really consider myself a printmaker, but I do like a certain quality you get that the printing press does on the paper. There's a certain quality that's different from painting or the colored pencil. It's an inkiness that I like. So I've kind of learned how to control it now.
I noticed that as you developed your stencil theories of the working waterfront here in Maine, that some of the earlier ones were fairly straightforward impressions, and actually people very often think that they're a woodcut. But as you developed it, you started to do quite a bit of overprinting, or am I mistaken?
That's right. Printing the same print again and again and using different stencils on top of the earlier stencils. After about 3 hours, this gets pretty exhausting. I think next to actually inking the plate with stencils on it, the next most important part is arranging those stencils. I'm really trying to make an interesting composition. So I keep moving them around. When I think I've got sort of what I want, I'll print it. And then I can run it through the press the second time with another stencil on top to make the composition more interesting. I'm just lifting this off, but it leaves an imprint on the plate.
Explain to me what a ghost
The ghost print is when you print your paper and take it off, there's a lot of ink left on this plexiglass plate. If it looks like enough ink left, I'll run another paper through and get the same print, but instead of black, it'll be grays. But I'd say my most interesting prints come out of ghost prints. This will look very different from the first one through there.
John Wisserman, in working with stencils, I think is very unusual. Stencils have been used in printmaking for a long time. However, I don't know many artists who totally work with stencils as he does. He spends all winter cutting these intricate stencils, and I'm sure they're from sketches that he's done of the locations. But there are not many people working this way, and it's a pleasure to see his results.
Now, do you find that's a useful way of working? I mean, obviously it works for you, but to have different parts of the process are really so different as activities. I mean, cutting a stencil is one kind of activity.
Yeah.
Printing is a very different.
Yeah.
And then the handwork at the end, so they almost, you can operate in, as I say, you almost need a different state of mind.
Right, yeah. The printing especially, because you have to go pretty fast. I soak the papers first. You don't want them to dry out. Once you print it, you roll all that ink out. You don't want the ink to dry, so I find I'm on my feet very active for 3 hours. Hardly time to think.
Is that good?
For me, it is. I think I do most of this composing intuitively. I don't think about it too much. I think when I'm drawing the original stencil and cutting it, but the actual printing of it, I just go by what looks right. I'm going to print this stencil right on top of there, slightly off register, so I get a few white lines showing like I have there. It's going to be like that. Okay, that's what I want to get it right. The biggest time I spend is taking these prints out after they're dry and studying them and then deciding what I want to do. So I'll spend more time working on them with colored pencils, or sometimes just a black pencil. That'll take more time than actually cutting the stencils and doing the printing. The major time is spent now just creating the composition, getting the color effect I want, or just generally completing it. The printing part of it is really the quickest part. It takes the least time because I've spent a lot of time drawing and then cutting a stencil. And composing on the press is fairly quick. And running it through is quick. And then right then, I sometimes will run it through a second time with another stencil on it, or even a third time. But then I have to put it away for a while for it to dry. So when I get it out again, look, it'll be kind of a surprise. I'd say by the time I finish with the printing press, the picture is half done. And that second half will take much longer than the first half.